For 80 years, the US dollar has ruled the world. Every barrel of oil, every central bank, every crisis, the dollar sat at the center of all of it.
But right now, something is happening that hasn't happened in generations. Countries are actively trying to escape the dollar, and in early 2026, the dollar lost more reserve share in 3 months than it normally loses in 2 to 3 years.
So is this the beginning of the end? Is the dollar about to collapse and get replaced by a BRICS currency? Or is this just noise, the dollar wobbling but nowhere near falling?
Today, we argue both sides with real data and give you the AI verdict, plus a probability on whether the dollar actually collapses. Then you vote.
Let's break it down. First, you have to understand why the dollar became king, or none of this makes sense.
After World War II, the U.S. had the biggest economy, the most gold, and the most stable government. The world agreed we'll price global trade in dollars. That became the Bretton Woods system. And it gave America something economists call exorbitant privilege. Because everyone needs dollars, America can borrow more cheaply than anyone, print the world's money, and critically use the dollar as a weapon.
Even today, the dollar's dominance is staggering. It's involved in about 89% of all foreign exchange transactions. There's roughly $14 trillion in dollar debt held outside the United States. When you buy almost anything across borders, a dollar is usually involved.
And that last part, the dollar as a weapon, is the key to this whole story, because that's what made the rest of the world nervous.
So why are countries suddenly trying to leave? It's not really economics, it's politics.
The turning point was 2022. After Russia invaded Ukraine, the US and its allies froze hundreds of billions of dollars of Russian reserves overnight.
And that sent a chilling message to every country on Earth. If you ever get on America's bad side, your dollars can be frozen or seized, even if they're quote-unquote yours.
For countries like China, India, Saudi Arabia, that's terrifying. So they started asking, what if we didn't have to depend on the dollar? What if we had options?
Enter BRICS, originally Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, now expanded with Indonesia, Iran, Egypt, the UAE, and more. Together, they represent nearly 40% of global GDP by purchasing power and almost half the world's population.
Their stated goal isn't necessarily to destroy the dollar, it's to build an escape hatch so the dollar can't be used against them.
And here's what poured fuel on it. When the US threatened tariffs on countries trading with Russia, and even a 100% tariff on BRICS nations that ditched the dollar, it pushed them to coordinate harder, not back down. Let's argue the collapse case as hard as we can. The dollar really is in danger.
Argument 1, the reserve share is genuinely falling. In 2000, the dollar was about 71% of global reserves. By end of 2025, it was around 58%. And in early 2026, it dropped to roughly 56% in a single quarter, losing more in 3 months than it usually loses in years. Argument 2, central banks are dumping dollars for gold. In just 1 quarter, dollar reserves fell by an estimated $340 billion, even as total reserves grew. China, Russia, and Turkey have been buying gold aggressively. Gold is heading toward $4,000 an ounce. Argument 3, they're building a real alternative system. BRICS is creating cross-border payment platforms to bypass SWIFT, linking their central bank digital currencies, even a BRICS grain exchange priced in local currencies. This is infrastructure, not just talk. Argument 4, the dollar got weaponized 1 too many times. Every sanction, every asset freeze, every tariff threat gives the rest of the world another reason to find an exit. America may be spending its own privilege. Argument 5, history says no currency reads forever. The British pound was the world's reserve currency. In 1948, it was twice the dollar share. By 1980, it was down to 2%. Empires end, currencies fall. Why would the dollar be different? So the collapse case, falling reserve share, central banks fleeing to gold, a real alternative being built, self-inflicted weaponization, and the lesson of history. The throne is shaking.
Now the other side, that the dollar is nowhere near collapse, just as hard.
Argument 1, 56% is still massive. Yes, it's falling, but no other currency is even close. The euro is a distant second and structurally limited. The Chinese yuan, still less than 5% of global reserves. There is no replacement waiting in the wings.
Argument 2. The dollar still dominates where it counts. 89% of all foreign exchange transactions, the vast majority of trade invoicing, $14 trillion in offshore dollar debt. That's not a currency on its deathbed, that's the plumbing of the entire world economy.
Argument 3. BRICS can't even agree with itself. India refuses to settle oil in Chinese yuan because it doesn't want to trade dependence on America for dependence on China. In February 2026, India actually signed a trade deal with the US and cut Russian oil purchases. The bloc is divided.
Argument 4. There's no trusted alternative. To replace the dollar, a currency must be safe, stable, and freely tradable, backed by deep markets and rule of law. The yuan is controlled by Beijing. The ruble is sanctioned. Gold isn't a currency you can run an economy on. Nobody trusts the alternatives enough. Argument 5. The transition takes decades, not years. Even the pound's fall took 40 to 50 years. Most analysts see the dollar drifting to maybe 40-45% of reserves by 2040. A decline, yes, but not a collapse. Gradual erosion is not the same as a crash. So the dollar is fine case. No real replacement exists. It still runs global finance, BRICS is divided, alternatives aren't trusted, and even a decline would take decades. The throne is shaking, but it's not falling.
Here's the thing that cuts through all the noise, and both sides actually agree on it once you slow down.
There are two totally different things people mix up. 1, de-dollarization, the world slowly using less dollar. 2, dollar collapse, another currency suddenly replacing it.
De-dollarization? That's real. It's measurable. It's happening right now. The dollar share is genuinely shrinking.
A sudden collapse with the yuan taking over? There is almost no serious evidence that's happening anytime soon. No currency is ready.
So the most likely future isn't dollar dies. It's a multipolar world where the dollar is still the biggest player, but shares the field with the euro, the yuan, gold, and digital systems. Less of a king, more of a first among equals.
And this matters to you directly. A weaker dollar over time can mean higher prices on imports, higher U.S. borrowing costs, and a gradual shift in who holds economic power. Not a crash you'll see on the news, a slow tide you'll feel in your wallet.
Now, what could actually speed this up? Because there are real wildcards.
Wildcard 1, the Iran conflict. Analysts say if instability in the Middle East continues, it could push the dollar's reserve share below 55% by the end of 2026. Oil priced in other currencies changes everything.
Wildcard 2, a loss of Fed independence. If markets ever believe the U.S. is politically interfering with its central bank or might not pay its debts, the timeline could compress from decades to years. Some analysts say the dollar could fall below 30% of reserves by 2030 in a shock scenario.
Wildcard 3, technology. Central bank digital currencies and blockchain payment systems could let countries trade directly, bypassing the dollar in ways that were technically impossible 10 years ago. Tech could accelerate what politics started.
But every one of those is a could. The base case without a shock is still slow, gradual erosion. The wildcards are risks, not certainties.
All right, AI verdict. Will the dollar collapse?
Here's the honest read. Collapse signals real pressure. Reserve share fell from 71% to 56% and accelerating. Central banks fleeing to gold, $340 billion dumped in a quarter. BRICS building real alternative payment systems. Weaponization keeps giving countries reasons to leave. History, no reserve currency rules forever. Stability signals, the dollar endures. Still 56% of reserves, no rival is close. Yuan under 5%, euro structurally limited. BRICS is internally divided, India versus China. No trusted, liquid, rule of law alternative exists. Even a real decline takes decades, not years.
The AI verdict? No collapse, but a slow abdication. The dollar is not going to crash and vanish, but it is slowly stepping down from absolute king to first among equals. De-dollarization is real. A dollar collapse is not. At least not without a major shock.
The accurate headline isn't the dollar is dying, it's the dollar is losing its monopoly. That's a huge story, just not the apocalypse the internet keeps selling.
AI probability read, dollar reserve share falls below 50% by 2030, 45%. Dollar suffers a sudden collapse, crash by 2030, 10%. A single BRICS currency actually replaces the dollar by 2035, under 5%. World becomes clearly multipolar on currency by 2035, 65%. Gold keeps rising as central banks diversify, 70%.
So the most likely future? Not a crash, a drift. The dollar stays number one for years, but its monopoly quietly ends, and the world spreads its bets across gold, the euro, the yuan, and digital money.
The dollar isn't collapsing. It's being slowly dethroned. And that's a story that plays out over decades, in your lifetime, but not on tomorrow's news.
So there it is. The dollar's grip is real, but slipping. BRICS is building an exit, but can't agree on the door. And the reserve share is falling fast, but from a mountain so high that even a big drop still leaves it on top.
De-dollarization, absolutely real. Dollar collapse, mostly myth. The truth is the boring, important middle, a slow shift to a multipolar money world.
So here's your call. After both sides, do you think the dollar collapses within our lifetime, or does it stay king for decades? And what's the one thing that would change your mind?
Comment collapse or king and tell us, are you buying gold or are you betting on the dollar? Best arguments get pinned.
And subscribe. We do these fact-checked, both sides AI verdicts on the biggest money and power stories. No hype, no doom, just the data.
Next video, we break down what a BRICS gold-backed currency would actually mean for your savings, because that's the scenario everyone's scared of.
The dollar's been king for 80 years. It's not dead, but for the first time in generations, it has real competition, and that changes the world quietly, not with a bang. Drop your verdict, stay sharp. See you in the next one.